Hello everyone, I'm Chidinma.
And I'm Ojay. You can call me OJ. Welcome to ScholarChit Chat. We're your hosts on this exciting journey.
That's right, ScholarChit Chat is not just a podcast, it's a conversation, a talk show crafted to bring you a fresh, honest, and comprehensive perspective on academic scholarships, professional life, and the unique experiences of life in the diaspora or as an international student.
And we are not just talking theory, we're sharing insights from our own lived experiences because we've been there, navigating academia, chasing scholarships, and building our professional lives in a foreign land. So, a big thank you for joining us today. It's fantastic to have you on board.
We're beyond excited about this episode and we hope you are too. Get ready to dive deep, laugh with us, and maybe even learn a thing or two. So without much ado, let's jump into ScholarChit Chat. It's going to be a journey full of stories, wisdom, and maybe a few surprises along the way.
So thanks for being here, and let's make this episode an insightful and enjoyable ride. Here we go. Hello, scholars and listeners. Welcome back to another episode of ScholarChit Chat. Today, we're diving into a very crucial part of graduate school application process, and that is writing a standout research proposal. What is a research proposal, Chidinma, and why do you want a standout research proposal?
That's an awesome question, OJ. First of all, I would like to start with a research proposal. Really, it's more like a document that I would say this describes what you want to study. So I think at the point in my life I've always been interested in research. And I kept thinking to myself, what is everybody searching for again? Like because I'm like, what are you looking for again? So it's called research for a reason, like you're researching again. So think of it as what do you want to research again, right? About, and then you're kind of proposing these are the gaps I've noticed in what has been done previously. This is a little bit of concept. These are the methods I want to use to go about it, and this is what I want to do. So, at this particularly important, for instance, I know for to a very large extent, I think that I mean, generally we share our experiences, but I think this is maybe much more applicable for graduate applicants that want to study for a PhD, particularly in Europe, I would say generally more than the US.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to kind of like prepare like a document that's kind of defines what you want to do during your PhD, because the idea of that kind of further studies that you've gained at least, or you're gaining some conceptual skills to conduct an actual study. So it's more like think of it as maybe you want to prepare your favorite soup, and then you're proposing or you're telling us, you're giving us a pitch. This is how I want to do it, right? So it's
Yeah.
really your chance to show how your research will contribute to the field of where you're currently studying, and why you're the best person to do it, right? So that's just the brief summary. And you ask the question as to, why it's important. You're trying to tell the story. And for graduate school, most times because you're going to be funded, you're trying to tell people, hey, fund me to do this stuff. So it needs to first of all make sense to you, right? And it's so funny. I watched this funny skits by I've forgotten his name at the top of my head at the moment. So this guy created he did this Lai Wasabi, yeah, that's his name. He did
Oh,
his for his final year project. I don't know if you watched that skit. He invented like is he an inverter or
generator.
so?
Okay, yeah, it was
A
in that, I
generator,
think.
thank you.
Can't remember.
And it's like, okay, so what are
What's
you
going
trying
to
to do? And it's so funny because I think one of the comments is like, this idea shouldn't have left your head. So it's kind of like you putting down, because something may really make sense to you. You're very passionate about this. Like you feel like it's the next, but it's the cure of the whole thing in the whole world. And then by you put it down, you put it down, it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. So that's pretty much it. So let's go into how you can craft a proposal that catches the eye of the selection committee. So to kick things off, OJ,
Mhm.
I think I kind of like have highlighted something about this, but do you want to throw more light into why a research proposal is so important? I think you wrote one, right? So you may want to like kind of like break that out a little bit for us.
Yeah, true, true, true. Yeah, so Chidinma said, like, yeah, I remember, God, I used to dread. I used to be so scared of when I see any application and mention research proposal. I'm like, what is this for heaven's sake? Which because it's it's not just your personal statement. It's not writing about your life or your interest or your it's completely different, right? It's you saying, oh, I kind of have an idea of what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it requires some kind of work. You have to talk about your knowledge of the existing body of research, um,
Mm-hmm.
that you can think originally and come up with ideas of things that should be done to move the current understanding forward. So I mean, for me, it used to be very intimidating because, like, oh yeah, what am I? I'm writing proposal to a professor, somebody that is like leading
Mm-hmm.
their field. Like, what? How can whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
I write be substantial or mean anything? So I used to like
Mm-hmm.
completely dread it. But I mean, with a bit of experience, I mean, I still dread it a bit now, but not as bad as before. Like, I understand that. I understand the value of it. I understand that it's not supposed to be it's not supposed to be some, I mean, it's up for critique. It's a working document. It's not like the like what you propose is exactly what you have to do, or honestly, let me not
Mm-hmm.
go too far ahead. But again, like your research proposal just shows that, yeah, you're able to think, and what it is it's
Mm-hmm.
an outline of what you plan to study. So it's an
Mm-hmm.
outline of what you plan to study, and it's your kind of pitch in the academic world, like your pitch to the academic community as well, to so that they can like give you a space, or in some cases give
Mm-hmm.
you the money to pursue whatever your original idea is. So
Mm-hmm.
that being said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you a question actually, Ma, and it's about the components of a successful research proposal. So what would you advise that our listeners include if they are to draft a research proposal?
That's a very great question. I think first of all, you need to start with like what are you looking for? Like what do you want to do? A clear and a concise title. So
Mm,
I think that's very important. I know, for instance, and I don't know if that's something you guys also do, but I know within public health there's this there are different frameworks. So some people would say, for instance, you should follow the PICOS format such that when people read your title, they're able to identify your population. So let's say, for instance, you're doing a randomized control trial, they're able
yeah.
to identify your population of interest, your intervention, the comparator, like your outcome, and then the type of study design from your study. So let's
Mhm.
say, for instance, you have this new drug, and then you're like, oh, I think I want to research on how this new drug cures headache. So a clear and a concise title would contain the name of the drug itself. You don't just want to say antidepressants, for instance, or analgesics, for instance.
Mm,
There are tons of analgesics, right? So you want to be as clear and as concise. And then you also want to talk about your population, right? Some drugs are not good for young people, some are good. So, like, kind of like those dynamics, right? It's very important to have them. And then also your research question is very, very important. Like, I feel like even still, the title still, even the research question, it's more so for the framework I even talked about more than the title. So, and I think this is very helpful. Like when I was writing my dissertation, I found myself always going back to read my research question again. Because by the time you start, you can get lost in the middle of what you're doing. Like, what am I trying to do? And I think this research question would also even help people that are reading, like, what do you want to do? So
mhm.
it's a research question should be clear, still following still that same framework, for instance, that I shared. And then
Yeah.
its significance, like what are you going to do? What is the novel thing? I think that from proposals are actually graded on there's a section for novelty, right?
Yeah.
Are you trying to do the same thing that someone else did? So what is the gap? And at times, to be quite frank, like there's really nothing so new. It's just that maybe you're using a new methods or you have a new population, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it has on men, you're trying to do it on women, or just whatever, really. But just being able
Mhm.
to conceptualize that and put that there. I mean, I wrote a research proposal, but mine did not require a literature review, thank God. Like you, I always had also that dread of research proposals. I'm like, God, you guys should leave me alone. Give me the money. I can prove it to you that I can do it, but then that doesn't really work that way. So yeah, I think the methodology section is so important, right? So important because you may put the wrong methods or your methods are not feasible. So that's very important. I think for me, another part that was part of my own proposal I wrote was funding.
Mm.
I think there was a place for was there a place for funding? I think it was like a timeline,
Okay.
which was funny because I had to start with, oh, what am I supposed to do in the first year, second year?
Oh
And that
yeah.
was I had to put that. And then also potential impact of your research. So I mean there's just a lot of it together. But I think one thing is not to overthink this thing,
Mhm.
right? Like you, I had a dread for research proposals, but thankfully I had a supervisor that was on my neck and gave me a deadline. So I
Yeah.
just, once you start, you find out, oh, okay. And I think one last thing I would say that is really helpful is have a sample. Like she sent me a couple of proposal samples, and that was so helpful, to structure my proposal. So I don't know, OJ, are there any tips? Do you have any more pro tips to add? On how to organize your proposal or probably just write one very well.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Chidima, and points you made. I think I will just start off from emphasizing some things like I've already like clearly stated. I think for me, I always used to, I mean, the initial dread of proposals, apart from writing them, was actually having the idea, like, or like finding, they always say find the research gap. I'm like, where and how
Mm.
do I find the research gap? What is that research gap? And you talked about, oh, you may just be applying a different methodology, you may just be using a different population. You see, so I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of times especially when you have not done like research, when you have not done a lot of research, you feel like whatever it is you have to do has to be like something very big. But I remember there's
Mm-hmm.
this like illustration I saw of what actually like novel research is. In most cases, it's like
Mm.
there's a huge circle, and then they
Mm-hmm.
just you just poke one edge of the circle. Like it's almost like if the
Mm-hmm.
cycle is not zoomed in, probably would not even
Mm-hmm.
see that poke. But by the time
Mm.
multiple people are poking different areas around the cycle is actually pushing out and enlarging. So you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
come and just make the cycle bigger all of a sudden. So finding that research gap, like I think just doing the research space and seeing how people come up with ideas for projects has been very, very intriguing because like you in your mind, in fact, sometimes you think that people already know these things. And then because
True.
I remember listening to a presentation and the person said how the person found the particular thing the person was presenting was that all along they have been researching on that particular field, and there was just
Mm-hmm.
this thing that people just quote, or like there's this assumption that
Mm.
everybody was working on, and then you just realize that this
Mm-hmm.
assumption was never actually experiment. Like there was no experiment to actually validate the assumption, but it was a
Mm.
generally accepted assumption. And I think when he actually
Mm-hmm.
researched it, it wasn't even like there had to be like some modification to the assumption. So you can imagine that it's
Mm.
something that is even already well known. Like so for me, there are like some things that you'd be like, oh yeah, it's like this now. And then when you actually go and check, you're like,
Everybody
okay,
knows it.
yeah, everybody knows, but like you'll be like nobody has actually like scientifically, at least as a scientist, like nobody has actually like even not even like I feel like every field, every kind of field, like there's a way you want to validate whatever it is you are saying, and you just realize that
Yeah.
nobody has actually really truly validated this. Or even as a Nigerian, there's some things that are just like common knowledge in your area, like oh this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there's no publication
Mm-hmm.
about it. No, so if it's not, if
Very
it's there's
true.
nothing out there, it doesn't exist, even if everybody in your area knows about it. So again, I will not
Mm-hmm.
stress that about the ideas, but I feel like yeah, that the idea is something that a lot of people will struggle with. And then you mentioned having samples, and I feel like it helps every time. It's not just even about
Mm-hmm.
writing research proposal, but like for everything that you want to do, most times if people have done it like and they have done it in a good way, you will benefit from
Mm.
learning from the examples that they have set. So a sample is always a good place
Mm-hmm.
to start. And
True.
so let's assume you already have your idea, you have like a sample you've read through, and you want to start. I would say start with an outline. Generally, in writing, I think an outline is always really great because Chidma, you mentioned like wandering away from
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you start writing, you kind
Yeah.
of wander away from like what you've started, what you've outlined, or what you had in mind. So with your research question, of course, it frames the outline, and once you have the outline, kind of keeps you in check, I would say, and helps you to like
Mm-hmm.
deliver a very good thing because I like outlines. I like outlines and I use them. I think anybody that writes stuff
Yeah.
would use them. And so research proposal is like not an exemption to this rule of using outlines. And it helps make sure that what you're doing is logical. I think outlines have a role in playing have play a role in making having a logical flow of a write-up. Another thing that is very useful is headings and subheadings to keep your work
Mm,
organized. Heading because
mm,
sometimes it may be difficult to flow from one subject to the other. But when you put a stop and you
mm,
put a heading, people automatically understand that, oh yeah, you have kind of had a break from the first topic and you're moving to something new. So paragraphs may not
mm,
easily, I mean, it may be awkward to do that sometimes with paragraphs, but like headings, subheadings, they're really, really helpful. So you've already emphasized making, like having a detailed methodology. So you want to be sure that you are able to explain very well and convince people that what you set out to do is actually achievable. It's achievable
mm.
even with the money. Like if you have to like explain like your expenses, you want to be sure to put people's mind that is that the money you are asking for is able to achieve the objectives that you have set out to do and with the methods that you already also propose to go about it. So yeah, that's where I will stop.
That's fantastic, OJ. I think that's, people like, I think strategy, like having a strategy, it's you can never go wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because by the time you start writing, you're like, oh, this is something I should do. Oh, this is something I should have factored in. So that's very, very, very important. Like that outline is, I think that's something you learn in essay writing. I think right from secondary school. So our
Mhm.
English teacher then would always tell us, hey, before you start writing your essays, where is your outline? So you
Yeah.
write your outline, you have what's in your paragraph one, paragraph two. So it's always, you can never go wrong with that. So
Yes.
just to stretch a little bit further, like what do you think are some of the common pitfalls in writing research proposals and how can our listeners like avoid them?
That's a good one. That's a good question. I think that again, as I said, I think I will still drop back to the illustration I pointed earlier. It's like making that poking that circle at a very specific point, and poking it, yeah, in a very specific point. Really, it's not. You don't want to try to be to pose as if you are going to be doing more than what you're actually doing. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people are just have a proposal and you're like, what exactly are you trying to do? You want it to be clear that you have a specific purpose. So your objectives, your aims are very, very clear. You're testing a hypothesis. The hypothesis you are testing is very, very obvious and clear as well. So it's not just too generic, too nah, you want again. I think you're talking about is it if it's a particular population, if it's a for me
Mm-hmm.
the kind of work I'll be like if you're examining a particular gene, if you're yeah, if, the more specific the better. I mean, you don't want to narrow yourself or box yourself too tight, but again, you don't want to just be too wide open because yeah, there's no project that can be achieved that way. And
Mm-hmm.
being too wide open, what it does is that it makes it seem like an ambitious project that would not be feasible, that would not be
Mm-hmm.
achievable. So, but the more defined the aims and the objectives or the hypotheses are, the more it seems as though it will be feasible. And talking about this reminds me of and sometimes even the most well thought out plans, they just be like, oh, it's too ambitious. Because today we
Mm-hmm.
had a lab meeting and the person was taking us through like the journey to where they were now and in the research. And they mentioned the grant
Mm-hmm.
application they made a while ago for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And that the
Mm-hmm.
feedback they got was that this is too ambitious. and, and
That's
I mean,
interesting.
yeah, and I mean, to be fair, that project is still in the works. They still intend to undertake that project, but yeah, it
Mm,
was very ambitious because there are a lot of bottlenecks that up till now has hindered the kickoff of that project. Not even money this time around, but like other things around it. And these are like accomplished PIs and stuff. So everybody can
mm,
make this mistake, is what I'm trying to say. So take your time actually to think things through and take your time to like talk through it with people. So like you have supervisor, I feel like, or you have like a kind of academic mentor, even if it's a peer that can just reason with you and be like, it's like this one would not go. Just kind of have those kind of
mm-hmm.
conversations. And then yeah, another thing you want to look out for is funding. Of course, most times you're writing proposals because of funding, apart from like just the approval from like maybe your school or whatever that is feasible. But like most times you also want to get money. And so
Yeah.
you want to make sure that it's aligned to what the funding body requires. So sometimes they always have like calls, or I don't know what they call it, like just be call, and you should check that, oh, this is the one, this, and yes, my proposal answers this. So if the proposal doesn't ask for how you spend the money and you put it in, nobody asks you. If it, and maybe you put that in at the expense of something else, because I think that sometimes they usually have like word counts. Most of the things have word counts, because some people
True.
continue writing forever. So you don't want to like waste your work on talking about something that is not of interest to maybe the funders or the departments, right? You want to make sure that it's
Mm.
completely tailored to the department. So I think yeah, and I don't know, Chidima. Trying to talk about a lot of things, but there's so much involved in writing a proposal, and I wonder if you have any other additional stuff to add to it.
Yeah, I think that, like you said a lot, and I think that, I would say in terms of my final thoughts, I just think keep refining your proposal. You know, we talked about having a sample, give it to people. Like, I find it very helpful. Like, you could give it to your family member who is probably not even in your field, right? And
Yeah.
then, or your friend. And then if they go through it and it doesn't make sense at all, of course,
Yeah.
every field has their own jargon, right? But then if it doesn't make sense at all, then you may begin to think that, oh, well, I think that I should actually, maybe there are things I should, tailor down on, right?
Yeah.
So feedback is gold. So you can seek opinions from mentors, you can seek from colleagues, people that can give you that third bird eye view is always very important. And
Yeah.
then I think that one key thing about your research proposal is doing something or selecting a topic that you're passionate about, right? So don't be like, okay, oh, climate change is the in thing now, and you literally know next to nothing about it, but then that's where the money is, and it's like follow the money. And then you're
Yeah.
writing a proposal, you're not, because it always reflects, like when you see when someone is passionate about something and then another person who is not, it reflects, right? So it will shine through your writing, it will shine through how you do your research, right? So choose something you're passionate about. So, and always remember that you're trying to tell a story. Before people meet you, they will see your proposal, right? So a well-crafted proposal is a big step towards your academic goals. Don't be afraid of it, face it head on. It's really honestly not as complicated as you think, trust me. And we, here at ScholarChit Chat, always remember that we're rooting for you and we got your back. So I think those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chidima, for those insights. Thank you so much, and I think you've nailed it. Feedback is good, and with everything, I would say just give yourself enough time. As I said,
Mm,
as I mean, if you listen to our podcast, continue to reiterate. Don't rush these things. Give yourself enough time to get feedback, to read it again, to edit it, to refine it. And again, don't be scared. After you've done all these things, don't be scared to like submit it. Your
mm.
research proposal is your chance to shine. So I would say embrace the challenge, don't run away from it. So thank you for tuning in, and be sure to catch our next episode for again more academic tips and more of our personal stories. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries and exploring the frontiers of knowledge. Happy writing. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of ScholarChit Chat. If you found our conversation insightful and enjoyable, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. We've got a lot more in store and we don't want you to miss out.
We are always diving into topics like this: academics, scholarship, professional life, and the international student experience. It's what makes Scholars Chit Chat your go-to podcast for a fresh perspective. Also, don't keep all this wisdom to yourself. Share this episode with your friends and family who could benefit from it. We are building a community of learners and would love for you to be a part of it.
Your thoughts matter to us. We want to hear from you. Drop your comments and questions in the chat, or send your questions, suggestions, and comments to scholarchitchat@gmail.com. Your input helps shape the future of ScholarChit Chat.